Miguel Sampaio was 52 years old and carried a broken promise in his chest. He had sworn never to bond with another Cave-on-Nine partner. Not after the incident that haunted his nights. Thor was the dog no one dared touch, the animal the unit had given up on, ready to be discarded as an unsolvable problem. Until a 5-year-old girl did what no adult could. She simply sat on the floor, at a distance, in silence, and Thor's world stopped screaming. What no one expected was that an urban disaster would demand an impossible choice. That this dangerous dog would have to decide between the fear he had always known and the courage someone had finally planted within him. This story will show you that love and loyalty need no words. Miguel pushed open the side door of the kennel before 5 in the morning. The metal groaned softly, the sound echoing down the empty corridor. With cold fingers, he checked each latch, testing padlocks and grates. The lights were still dim. The smell of disinfectant mingled with old urine and damp kibble. Miguel breathed through his mouth, avoiding the heavy air. "Morning, Sampaio," a voice said from behind him. He turned slowly. Captain Helena stood there, a clipboard tucked under her arm. Her face was serious, unhurried. "Captain," Miguel acknowledged. "In early again," she noted. "Always," he replied. Helena's gaze drifted to the far end of the corridor. Thor was in the last kennel, his body tense against the concrete wall. The dog's breaths were short and sharp. "He reacted last night," she said. "The patrol got too close." Miguel's fingers tightened into a fist. A slow burn of guilt rose in his stomach. There was no contact. "There doesn't have to be," Helena said. "Command is reviewing his case." Miguel felt the old weight settle on his shoulders. He had failed before. He couldn't fail again. "How much time do we have?" "A few days," she said. "Log everything, any progress." She left without waiting for a reply. Her footsteps faded down the hall, and the silence returned, heavy and oppressive. Miguel walked to Thor's kennel. The dog lifted his head, snout pointed forward. His eyes were fixed, unblinking. "I know," Miguel said, his voice low. "I know you're scared." Thor growled. The sound was dry, a sudden rip in the quiet. Miguel took a single step back. His hands were trembling, but he held his body firm. "We'll try again," he murmured. The dog turned his face to the wall. His body seemed to shrink, coiling into itself. Miguel backed away slowly, the feeling of an ultimatum clinging to his skin. The training yard was covered in damp sand. Miguel held the short leash, keeping Thor at a safe distance. The dog's eyes darted everywhere, his ears pinned back. "Sit," Miguel commanded. Thor sat instantly, his body rigid, his breathing ragged. An officer walked past the side gate. Thor exploded forward, yanking the leash with his full force. The growl turned into a sharp, frantic bark. Miguel held on, his arm locked straight, his shoulder burning. "Quiet," he grunted. "Thor, quiet." The dog lunged again, the leash snapping taut. "He's a lost cause, Sampaio," a voice called from the bleachers. Miguel looked up. Sergio stood with his arms crossed, a crooked smile on his face. "He's only getting worse." Other officers began to move away, their unease clear. Miguel hauled Thor back, the dog resisting, his hind paws slipping in the sand. "End of session," Miguel said, his voice tight. He reeled in the leash with quick, angry movements. The anger wasn't at the dog, but at himself. Sergio came down from the stands. "You know what happens now, don't you?" I know. He'll be put down, Sergio said, and you'll go down with him. Miguel pushed past him without a word. Thor followed, his head low, sticking close to his leg. The corridor felt narrower than usual. Miguel took a deep breath, trying to loosen the knot in his chest. He headed for his office. He needed a plan. He needed something to work. The door creaked as he pushed it open. The small room was filled with old files and the smell of stale coffee. Miguel looked at his desk. There were no answers there. An old photograph was tacked to the wall with yellowed tape. Miguel stared at the dark-furred German shepherd sitting beside a younger man. Himself, 12 years ago. The air in the room grew thick. He pulled out his chair and sat down heavily. He had hesitated on that call. He had watched the worst happen. That memory was caught like a fishhook in his throat. The door opened without a knock. Sampaio. Miguel turned. Captain Helena was back, a manila envelope under her arm. The full report, she said, placing it on his desk. Every incident from the last 3 months. Her eyes held something different. Not anger, but concern. You know the protocol. I know. Then you know I can't hold this off forever. Miguel stared at the report, the words blurring. He felt the faith he'd had as a boy twist into a knot in his throat. I'll get results, he said. I hope so, she replied. Because no one else believes you can. She left, the door closing softly behind her. Miguel picked up the report. His hands shook as he read the numbers, the dates, the names. Everything was against Thor, and against him. We'll try again, he said to the papers. It doesn't matter who believes. He stood up. The weight was still there, but so was the decision. Nina waited by the metal gate. Her small fingers clutched a colorful scrap of fabric. Its yellow and red faded. She watched the dogs from a distance. The barks echoed, but it was the silence between them that held her attention. A staff member was looking at her phone. Nina slipped away, one step at a time. There was a side passage. The gate was ajar. Someone had forgotten to lock it. Nina slid through the gap, the fabric clutched in her hand. Inside the kennel, Thor lifted his snout. A new scent reached him, unfamiliar, small. His body stiffened. His front paws shifted forward. Nina walked down the corridor, the cold floor beneath her bare feet. She saw the kennels, one by one. Big dogs, small dogs, all of them behind bars. Thor was in the last one. She stopped before his enclosure. The dog approached the bars, a low growl starting in his chest, rising slowly. Nina just looked at him, not speaking, not moving. Her eyes met his. She wasn't invading, not forcing. She was just there. Thor sniffed the air. His body was tense, but he wasn't charging. Nina remained perfectly still. The scrap of fabric fell softly from her hand to the floor. The growling stopped. Miguel heard the sound of the kennel change. A deep rumble that was different. He ran down the corridor, his heart pounding. Nina was sitting on the floor, a safe distance from the bars. The fabric lay in the empty space between them. Thor was taking short steps toward the grate, sniffing, retreating, then advancing again. Miguel arrived, ready to shout. His mouth opened, but he froze. The girl was motionless. The dog wasn't attacking. Nina, Miguel whispered. The girl turned her head. Her eyes were calm. He didn't hurt me. Miguel crouched slowly, his legs trembling. You can't be in here. I just wanted to see, she said. Thor backed away into the kennel, but his gaze was fixed on the spot where the fabric lay. Miguel took Nina's hand. She stood without resisting. Let's go, he said. She followed him. As they left, Miguel glanced back. Thor was lying down, his snout on the concrete floor. Something had shifted. Miguel didn't know what, but it had changed. Helena called Miguel into the conference room. Sergio was there, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. That was a fluke, Sergio said. Next time, it'll be a tragedy. She didn't touch him, Miguel countered. She didn't invade his space. So what? Sergio scoffed. A kid doesn't understand space. Helena looked at Miguel, her expression unreadable. He responded differently, Miguel insisted, because she acted differently. Are you hearing this? Sergio asked Helena. She took a deep breath. Miguel, I understand what you're trying to say, but I can't risk it. I know, Miguel said. In his kennel, Thor kept looking at the spot where the fabric had been. That spot was different now. Miguel retrieved the piece of cloth, putting it in his pocket. It was both evidence and a liability. I'm scheduling the final evaluation, Helena said. You have 1 week. Sergio smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy, but of certainty. 1 week, Miguel repeated. Helena held the door for him. He walked out, his legs heavy, his resolve firm. He accepted because he had no choice, and because he still had a week. The next morning was cold. Miguel adjusted Thor's routine. Same time, same path, same voice. He reduced the stimuli. Fewer people, less noise, more predictability. Thor was responding. His body was less tense when Miguel approached. Nina appeared near the gate, a staff member beside her. Can I watch from far away? She asked. The staffer looked to Miguel. He hesitated. Only from a distance. Nina smiled and entered slowly. Miguel led her to a safe spot, 5 meters from the kennel. Sit here, he said. Don't move. She sat, her hands in her lap, her gaze lowered. Thor picked up her scent. He lifted his head. The dog approached the bars, sniffing the air, but he didn't lunge. Miguel held his breath. It felt like a prayer. Nina was quiet, just a presence. Thor lay down, not near her, but on the floor, some of the tension leaving his body. Seeing it, Miguel felt something crack open in his chest. It was hope, small and fragile. Thank you, he said to Nina. He's handsome, she whispered. Miguel knew he had a window, a small one, and he had to protect it. Sergio walked down the corridor, his boots loud on the concrete. He rapped something metallic against the wall. A key, a pen. It didn't matter. Just testing, Sergio said. Thor reacted instantly. A leap, a snarl. His body coiled like a spring. Miguel stepped in, placing himself between the noise and the animal. Get out of here, Sergio. Easy, Sampaio, Sergio said. Just wanted to see if he'd improved. Nina had flinched back, her face frightened, but then she returned to her spot. She sat down again, distant and quiet. Thor's breathing slowed. His rhythm returned. Miguel looked at Sergio, rage simmering beneath his control. Out, he said. Sergio left, the crooked smile still on his face. Miguel took a deep breath. He knew this path would be long and easily broken. He went to Helena's office and knocked. Come in. He entered. I want to officially request a rehabilitation protocol, he said, instead of a punitive one. Helena studied him, her eyes measuring. Are you sure? I am, Miguel said. He was committing to Thor, even at the risk of losing everything. Helena signed the form with quick, decisive strokes, the pen scratching against the desk. Short term, she said. You log everything. No new incidents. Understood. And no improvising, she added. Full protocol. Miguel took the document. The paper felt warm in his hands. He created a ritual. Same time every day. Same path. Same tone of voice. Thor's world became predictable, small, safe. Nina participated only as a distant, supervised presence. She brought a simple toy, a worn stuffed dog, and placed it on the floor far from the kennel, never touching the bars. Thor watched. The proud arch of his chest softened. His body relaxed. Miguel felt his own stiffness begin to yield, a millimeter at a time. Good, he murmured. Very good. Thor would lie down, not completely at ease, but observing more than reacting. Miguel wrote in his logbook, lies down on his own, observes without growling, accepts presence at 5 meters. The words felt like a victory, small but real. As Nina left with the staff member, she would wave at Thor. The dog would follow her with his eyes, no barks, no growls. He's listening, Miguel thought, with his whole body. On the training yard, Miguel placed a bite sleeve on the ground, far from Thor. Let's try, he said, loosening the leash slightly. Thor approached it slowly. He sniffed the sleeve, picked it up, dropped it, and looked back at Miguel. You don't have to do anything, Miguel said softly. Just choose. Thor picked up the sleeve again, holding it for a few seconds before dropping it. Miguel kept his face calm, but inside the memory surfaced. He had lost one partner. He couldn't lose another. His hand began to tighten on the leash. Control was a fragile thing, threatening to return. Nina watched from a distance. Quiet. Her silence was working. Thor was moving back toward Miguel. He sat, waiting. Good boy, Miguel said, his voice trembling. Thor stood before the gate, no longer growling. Miguel was afraid to believe it, but he was. In the locker room, Sergio's voice was loud, and the other agents were listening. Sampaio's romanticizing the animal, Sergio said. This is going to end badly. He's always been like that, another agent added. Worse than that, Sergio retorted. He's putting all of us at risk. Helena was passing in the hallway. She heard everything. She stopped at the door, and the agents fell silent. Sergio, she said, with me. Now. Sergio stood, the smirk vanishing from his face. They walked to her office, and Helena closed the door behind them. Discipline works both ways, she said. You have limits, too. I'm just being realistic, Sergio argued. You're being destructive, Helena replied. Back in the kennels, Miguel felt the loneliness of the unit closing in. No one was defending him. No one believed. He clung to the work. It was the only thing he could do right. Thor was reacting less to common footsteps, but sharp sounds still sent a jolt through his body. A phone rang in the distance, and Thor exploded into a frenzy of barks. Miguel remained on constant, restless alert. We need help, Miguel said to himself. The decision was made. He needed a technical evaluation, a behavioral veterinarian. The vet arrived 3 days later. Dr. Carla, her hair pulled back, her gaze direct. She observed Thor from a distance, without judgment, without rush. He was exposed to trauma, Carla stated. A violent incident, reinforced by his own reactivity. Miguel listened, the words stripping the monster of its power. It's not malice, Carla continued. It's survival. Thor tracked her scent, approaching and retreating. Carla respected his space, marking her boundaries with her body, never invading. Miguel remembered. He too had been reinforced by hardness. He was living like Thor, poised to attack any emotion that came too close. What do I do? Miguel asked. Systematic desensitization, Carla said. Predictability, time, patience. She wrote out the plan, and Miguel read every word as if it were a map. Can he get better? He asked, his voice raw. He can, Carla said, if you believe. Miguel felt something shift inside him. For the first time, there was a path. The days passed. Miguel repeated the plan, step by step. Nina began appearing at fixed times, always supervised, always at the same distance. She became part of the routine, safe, predictable. Thor started accepting his food near the gate while Nina sat far off, quiet. The small gesture felt like a silent victory. Miguel slowed his own frantic pace. He breathed deeper. The guilt was losing its sharp edge. His chest felt lighter. Helena passed by, observing the progress. She didn't celebrate, but she let him continue. Keep at it, she said. I will, Miguel promised. Thor chewed his food slowly. Nina whispered something to her stuffed toy. Miguel realized it then. Trust was being built without a single touch. Only consistency. Only presence. A new directive arrived by email. Miguel read it on the old computer screen. An official stability test. Presence of other agents. Standard protocol. His stomach tightened. A cold dread crept into his hands. Sergio appeared at the doorway. Need any help with the test? He asked. The tone was all wrong. You'll be there anyway, Miguel said, his voice flat. Of course, Sergio replied. I'm part of the team. Miguel couldn't refuse. It would look weak. It would look like he was afraid. Fine, he said. Thor sensed the rising tension. His body grew rigid. Miguel tried to neutralize it with simple commands, with routine, with calm. On the day of the test, Nina was stopped at the entrance. Not today, sweetie, an officer told her gently. Nina stood outside, clutching a piece of colorful fabric like an amulet. Miguel saw her through the window, and his chest ached. The test was scheduled for the next morning. Miguel barely slept. The morning was gray. He led Thor on the leash, his steps slow and measured. The agents formed a human corridor, their bodies stiff with expectation. Thor was doing well. The seconds ticked by. Controlled breaths. Then came a sound. Metallic. Too close. Someone had dropped a key, or a tool. It didn't matter. Thor's body exploded. He lunged toward the sound. Miguel held the leash tight, redirecting him before he could cause any harm, but the image had already seared itself into everyone's minds. Agents recoiled, their eyes wide. Helena raised her hand. That's enough, she commanded. The test was over. As Thor was led back to the kennel, Miguel followed on heavy legs. Sergio shot him a look that said it all. I told you so. Helena took a deep breath. Miguel, I need concrete proof, she said, her voice firm. Otherwise, his removal is inevitable. Miguel nodded. He had no words. Outside, Nina was waiting, Her eyes searched for Miguel. He slipped out a side door, and she ran to him. "Is the dog okay?" she asked, her voice small and scared. Miguel knelt to her level. "He's learning," he said, "and sometimes learning hurts." Nina looked down at the fabric in her hand. "Can you give this to him?" Miguel took the cloth, his fingers trembling. "I can," he said. Nina offered a small, hopeful smile. Miguel went back inside. Thor was in his kennel, restless, sniffing the air, searching for the routine that had vanished that day. Miguel placed the fabric on the ground just outside the gate, a silent offering. Thor approached. He sniffed it. He backed away, but without a growl. A false sense of security washed over Miguel. A bond was there, but the threat of loss was closer than ever. The following Monday, Helena called Miguel into her office. It was too quiet. "Thor will be removed from operational duty," she said. "Transfer to another unit." Shame rose in Miguel like a fever, burning. "When?" he asked. 15 days, she said. "At most." Sergio was passing in the hall. He heard. He was satisfied. "Problem solved," he remarked to another agent. The unit treated it like logistics, not a life. Nina tried to visit, but the officer at the gate stopped her. "Not today. Captain's orders." She walked away crying, clutching her fabric. Thor sensed the change. The environment was different again, tense, dangerous. The growling returned. His body reverted to its old state. At night, Miguel would go to the kennel, alone, unseen. He'd stand before the gate, wordless, just watching. Thor would watch back. They were both trapped. Doubt began to poison Miguel's thoughts. An old memory surfaced. The partner he'd lost, the hesitation, the fatal mistake. He had promised himself he would never get attached again. And now he realized it was too late. Thor stood up, approached the gate, and stopped, breathing heavily, as if asking for direction he couldn't understand. Miguel pulled Nina's fabric from his pocket and placed it outside the kennel. Thor pressed his nose to the bars, letting out a low, different sound. It wasn't a threat. It was something else. Right there, in that moment, Miguel made a private choice. He would try one last thing, even if it cost him his position. "I'm not giving up on you," he whispered. Thor lay down, his eyes open, watching. Suddenly, the radio exploded with urgent calls. An old building was collapsing. Fire, debris, smoke. "Victims trapped," a voice crackled. "We need K9 search units." Helena ran to the command center as agents mobilized. "Where are the dogs?" she demanded. "All on other calls," a sergeant replied. "Or too far away." Time was the enemy. Every minute mattered. Miguel appeared at the door. "Thor can do it," he said. Helena stared at him, hesitating. "He's not cleared." "I know," Miguel said, "but he can locate, if I handle him carefully." Sergio shook his head. "This is madness." Helena made a split-second decision. "Go," she ordered. "But it's on you." Miguel ran to the kennels. He geared up Thor, who was trembling from the overstimulation, but followed Miguel, sticking close, as if that proximity were his only anchor. The truck tore out of the station, siren wailing. Miguel felt a real, sharp fear, not of the dog, of what the world could do to them both. The scene was chaos. Sirens, screams, black columns of smoke clawed at the sky. Miguel kept Thor on a short lead, protecting his space. Thor's nose was in the air, sniffing, pausing, sniffing again. Dust fell like dirty snow, coating everything. A civilian tried to run past, nearly brushing against the dog. Miguel pivoted, shielding Thor from the trigger. Control was stretched to its limit. Thor pulled toward a specific spot, his barks short and insistent. "He's got something," Miguel said into his radio. "Are you sure?" the voice asked. "I'm sure," Miguel replied, choosing to trust the signal, to trust the dog. Thor pulled harder. Miguel followed, and they entered an unstable corridor of cracked concrete and twisted metal. The world went dark as smoke swallowed the light. Miguel kept his hand on the collar. Thor pressed forward. Together, they went into the darkness, into the danger. Inside, the smoke hung low. Miguel breathed through his mouth, the air burning his throat. The structure groaned around them. "Easy," Miguel murmured. Thor moved in a zigzag pattern, his nose to the ground. "Find," he commanded. Thor zeroed in on one spot where the air flowed differently. A distant crash shook the floor. Miguel held Thor steady, stopping him from bolting. "Quiet. Stay with me." Thor looked up at him, seeking confirmation. "Good boy," Miguel said, choosing courage over fear. Thor returned to the spot, barking and scratching at a pile of rubble. Miguel radioed in. "Here, I've marked the spot," Thor indicated. "Confirm location?" "Confirmed," Miguel said. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. The reply came back. "Possible live victim, but the ceiling is giving way." Miguel looked up. Cracks spread like spider webs. "Come fast," he urged. Thor lay down by the spot, panting, but he stayed. The team arrived with pry bars and hydraulic jacks. Miguel stayed beside Thor, keeping him focused as the men cleared a path. Thor tried to squeeze through a gap. "He wants to go in," a firefighter said. It was a risk, but Thor was insistent. "Let him try," Miguel said. Thor disappeared into the rubble. Miguel held the leash until it went taut, then let it go. "Come back when I call, Thor. Come back." The space tightened. A sharp crack signaled another collapse. Dust billowed up, obscuring everything. "Thor!" Miguel's voice was desperate, loud. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Then Thor reappeared, gray with dust, backing out, pulling on the leash, indicating a way through. "He's found the path," the firefighter said. The team followed, digging deeper. A hand emerged from the debris, then an arm, then a person. "We've got someone!" a firefighter yelled. Miguel pulled Thor back, clutching his collar. "You did it," he whispered. The ceiling groaned, louder now, more threatening. "Get out!" someone screamed. "It's coming down!" The victim was being carried out on an improvised stretcher as a section of the roof gave way. Concrete rained down. Miguel was shoved backward, losing sight of Thor in the chaos. "Thor!" he screamed. The smoke and the deafening roar swallowed his voice. He tried to push forward, but hands held him back. "You can't!" a firefighter yelled. "The whole thing is going!" "My dog is in there!" Miguel shouted, tearing himself free and running back toward the collapsing entrance. Outside, Nina had arrived, an officer trying to hold her back. Sirens filled the air. Chaos. Nina clutched the fabric to her chest, a small figure against the backdrop of disaster. "Where's the dog?" she asked. "I don't know, sweetie." The entrance was now a solid wall of dust. Nothing was coming out. And then a figure emerged. Thor, limping, breathing hard, but alive. Miguel was right behind him, his face masked in gray. He fell to his knees, grabbing the collar as if holding a miracle. "Thor," he said, his voice broken. Tears cut clean paths through the dust on his cheeks. Helena arrived, just in time to see it all. He surveyed the scene. The victim, alive. The dog, utterly exhausted. Miguel trembled, watching as the woman's expression softened, changing before his very eyes. In that moment, humanity shattered protocol. "Bring water," Helena commanded. "And get the vet, now." Miguel knelt, pulling Thor into a tight embrace as the dog rested his heavy head against him. "You're never going back into harm's way," Miguel whispered. "Never again." It was a promise, a prayer, an offering of gratitude. 5 days later, a quiet calm had settled over the kennels. Thor was resting in a more spacious enclosure, his paw bandaged. It was nothing serious, but he needed to heal. Miguel approached with slow, deliberate movements, demanding nothing. "How are you, boy?" he asked softly. Thor lifted his head, his tail giving a slow, faint thump against the floor. With Helena's permission, Nina entered. She sat at a distance, as she always did, a small piece of fabric clutched in her hands. "Hi, Thor," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The dog rose to his paws and slowly, cautiously, approached her. Nina placed the fabric on the ground between them and fell silent. Thor sniffed it gently, then lay down nearby, not touching her, but simply staying, simply being present. Miguel witnessed the scene unfold, a tightness blooming in his chest, not of pain, but of profound relief. Just then, Helena walked in, a paper in her hand. "Honorable retirement," she announced. "Signed by the command." Miguel took the document, his eyes scanning the words. "Services rendered. Exemplary courage. Discharged with honor." "He deserves it," Miguel said, his voice thick with emotion. "He does," Helena agreed. Sergio was passing down the hall. He stopped at the doorway, his gaze falling on Thor, then Nina, then Miguel. He said nothing, just stared at the floor with the hollow look of a man who has learned his lesson far too late. In that moment, Miguel felt the crushing weight of his own guilt begin to lift. He was realizing something vital. Courage wasn't about never making a mistake. It was about staying. It was about making things right. For the first time in years, he walked away with a lighter heart. Nina stayed a little longer, speaking softly to Thor. "You're brave," she murmured. "So brave." Thor closed his eyes, finally at rest. Soon after, a simple plaque was mounted in the unit. K9 Thor, retired with honor. The daily routine began again, but now it was colored by a living memory, by a newfound respect. As Miguel left the kennels, the sun warmed his face. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known was possible. The faith that had twisted into a knot inside him was finally beginning to unravel. Slowly, but surely. "Thank you," Miguel said, to the sky, to no one, and to everything. Thor lay resting. Nina was leaving. Miguel followed her out. The world kept turning, but for them something had changed forever.